People on the right, you have Republicans trying to sort of make themselves the victim. They seem to crave this idea of being the victims of hate. People on the right, you have Republicans trying to sort of make themselves the victim. They seem to crave this idea of being the victims of hate.
Democrats live in a world of opposites, where they can get away with saying something despite the truth being 180 degrees the opposite. In this video, we'll explore the Democrat world of opposites.
I wish I had the answer to that, because one of the things that we Democrats have a really hard time is connecting to people's hearts instead of here. We're really good at shoving out all the information that touch people here but not here. And I have been saying at all of our Senate Democratic retreats that we need to speak to the heart, not in a manipulative way, not in a way that brings forth everybody's fears and resentments, but truly to speak to the heart so that people know that we're actually on their side. We have a really hard time doing that, and one of the reasons that it was told to me at one of our retreats was that we Democrats know so much. That is true, and we have to kind of tell everybody how smart we are. One of the books that I always bring up is The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt, where the image is of an elephant, and the elephant is making all the decisions, go right, go forward, whatever. There's a rider on the elephant. The rider simply explains the elephant's decisions. Republicans speak to the elephant, the Democrats speak to the rider. That is why we're not speaking to people here, and we're just mainly going here.
Everything Mazie Hirono says is 180 degrees the opposite of the truth. They don't know so much. But even more comical is she says Democrats speak to the left brain, the more logical and calculating side of the brain, while conservatives speak to the right brain and appeal to people's emotions. That's right. It's conservatives who don't use facts or logic, but try to play on people's hearts and evoke emotional responses in order to gain support. Yep, because everyone knows Democrats have a long reputation for their calm and moderate temperament, and definitely not their hysterical antics, childish tantrums, screaming, crying, and totally unhinged behaviors.
Would you have ever imagined that a slogan like "Make America Great Again" would be so divisive? As somehow or another, like that would be like "Make America Great Again." It sounds like they just want to make things great, like all positive. No. And a red hat with white letters. Has there ever been a time like that where an object like a red hat with white letters was so repulsive to half the country?
See, it's the conservatives and not the Democrats who are willing to disregard all logic to such an extent that they disrupt events and attack people giving speeches titled "Men Are Not Women" because men are not women. No, those are very logical behaviors that Democrats like Mazie Hirono are known for and are good at connecting with their base on. If they could only find a way to play on people's emotions like conservatives do. Everything Mazie Hirono says is the complete opposite of the truth. If you don't believe me, there's an easy way to test which party plays on people's emotions versus appealing to their logic, and it's a very simple test. You just listen to them speak.
So for us, this is about inspiring people to the polls, giving them something to vote for, creating hope for this nation, and knowing that so long as there are working class Americans who believe in a prosperous and just future, we will have hope no matter how red the district.
Whether it's to deprive the dreamers of the respect they deserve, or whether it's taking babies away from their mothers. I'm a mother of 5, and my interest in government and politics stems from my concern about children. Children.
And here's Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York calling in artillery on her own position after an NBC researcher discovered that she had once supported national borders. Seriously.
You essentially said that you were embarrassed about your previous position on immigration. Tell me about that.
Well, I don't think it was driven from my heart. I was callous to the suffering of families who want to be with their loved ones, people who want to be reunited with their families. And
Jillian Moran says she's embarrassed by her previous position on being in favor of, actually enforcing our country's borders. Why is she embarrassed by her previous position? Not because of her reason or logic, or that it doesn't make fiscal sense. No. She's specifically embarrassed because her stance was not driven from her heart. In other words, she's embarrassed because her previous position was not solely driven by her emotions, but it should have been. Because, as she well knows, trying to cater to every which way the winds of left-wing insanity blow, that in order to be a good Democrat, you must be driven by emotions. You must make decisions with your heart and definitely not your head. And emotion-based decision-making is and has always been the sole game plan for Democrats, to cater to people's emotions, which is exactly the opposite of what Mazie Hirono says.
You essentially said that you were embarrassed about your previous position on immigration. Tell me about that.
well, I don't think it was driven from my heart.
It was there on August of 2017 we saw Klansmen and white supremacists and neo-Nazis come out in the open. Their crazed faces, illuminated by torches, veins bulging. He said there were, quote, some very fine people on both sides. Very fine people on both sides? And in that moment, I knew the threat to this nation was unlike any I had ever seen in my lifetime. That we're in the battle for the soul of this nation. Oh, that's even more true today. We are in the battle for the soul of this nation. Folks, America's an idea. An idea that's stronger than any army, bigger than any ocean, more powerful than any dictator or tyrant.
Whether it's empty platitudes about hope in the future, or your standard Democrat smearing of their opposition with ad hominems, racist, sexist, homophobic, Islamophobic, xenophobic, misogynist, white nationalist, bigot, blah blah blah. All those smears are solely to evoke emotional responses. Last month I made a video called Democrats Just Say Stuff About Immigration, and if you watch it, you can listen to the arguments for why we should all be on board with mass immigration that Democrats make. None of which are logical ones, but 100% emotional plays. It's these people are poor and they should just come in, and if you're against that, you're like a Nazi. Or it's they're taking children away from parents and kidnapping babies, yada yada yada. They should just not enforce the law because that's what nice people would do. No logical arguments to be found, 100% emotion, and it's the same way for every major political argument the Democrats make. The trans movement, not about science or facts or logic, 100% emotion. Universal healthcare, not about what the costs are or how we pay for it. It's people are sick and need healthcare. Don't you want sick people to get the care they need? Don't worry so much about the cost. Guns, it's about the children and violence, and you're killing children for supporting your own rights. None of the proposals they push would do anything to stop mass shootings, but support them anyways and show you care. 100% emotion. I could go on all day, because every political argument made by Democrats follows the same emotionally manipulative pattern that manifests in the antics, the virtue signaling, the outrage, and mass hysteria that's ubiquitous on the left today. But Mazie Hirono lives in the Democrat world of opposites, and when you live in an imaginary world of opposites, even blatant racism is not racism, but only if that racism is by Democrats.
A lot of people on the internet today confusing the expressive way anti-racists and minorities talk about white people, unquote, with actual race-based hatred for some unfathomable reason. So he looks at those tweets from tweets that say things like, and I quote, dumbass effing white people marking up the internet with their opinions like dogs pissing on fire hydrants. And he says that this is actually the expressive way anti-racists and minorities talk about white people. And this should never be confused with actual race-based hatred. It would be unfathomable for you to actually equate these two things. Like when you say dumbass effing white people, how could I not read that as, oh, that's just the expressive way that Asian people talk, which is racist, you idiot. Okay, Zach Bode, just the worst. He's just the worst. And then David Joachim, who is, I guess, a writer for the ex-New York Times writer. He tweets out, Dear white people, racism is about the powerful keeping down the powerless. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Racism can be used by the powerful to keep down the powerless, but racism is not about the powerful keeping down the powerless. Racism is about race-based hatred. That is the actual definition. We generally are the powerful, meaning we white people. White people isn't a slur. Oh, really? It's not a slur? Why don't you say black people and then make a giant generalization about black people? The F word for gay people and the N word are slurs because they subordinate. You know, as opposed to saying dumbass effing white people. That's not subordinating white people in any way. It says your moral equivalence is nonsense. Reverse racism isn't a thing. You're right, reverse racism isn't a thing. It's just called racism. It's just called racism. It's not reverse racism. It's just called racism. But this is an actual perspective on the left. An actual perspective on the left suggests that racism from the powerful is the only thing that matters. There is no such thing as racism in any other context.
If you're racist, but racist against white people, that's not racism. That's something else. That's non-racism. It's like saying the right side of the highway that heads north is a road, but the other side that heads the other direction isn't a road. No. It's an expression to explore other places. It's not a road or a highway. Don't be silly.
Look, I don't have to tell you guys, they give millions of dollars to politicians. They have a very powerful tool. So, I mean, how do you expect politicians who need money to keep running for office to say no to the NRA?
Because we keep telling them that if they accept this blood money, they're against the children. They're against the people who are dying. And there's no other way to put it at this point. You're either funding the killers or you are standing with the children who have no money. We don't have jobs, so we can't pay for your campaign. We would hope that you have the decent morality to support us at this point.
And not take money from people that want to keep lessening gun legislation and making it even easier for these horrifying people to get guns. Because if you can't get elected without taking money from child murderers, why are you running?
Speaking of blood money, you know what's actually blood money? The DNC leveraging the mass shooting to raise money for their campaigns, sending emails after the Parkland shooting to donate to their campaigns because kids are dying. That's blood money, not gun manufacturers selling guns or the NRA protecting our Second Amendment rights. That's not blood money. Raising money off dead kids, that's blood money.
That if they accept this blood money, they are against the children.
In April 2017, California Democrat Eric Swalwell encouraged Trump to declassify Obama DOJ surveillance documents. Then in September, when Trump did publicly release the DOJ records, he tweeted, "Lawless, absolutely lawless. Using power to selectively release classified information is an abuse of power." So when Eric Swalwell poked at Trump and said, "Why don't you release the documents if you're innocent?" and then Trump releases the documents, and now he's lawless. The mayor of Paris threatened to sue Fox News for reporting on Muslim no-go zones because those no-go zones are some right-wing conspiracy theory or something. Well, now even the French Postal Service refuses to deliver to migrant no-go zones, citing the danger to their staff. UPS also refuses to deliver to Muslim no-go zones that Democrats say don't exist, but again, they do exist, and what Democrats say is the opposite of reality. Sally Cohn tweeted out criticism of Mitch McConnell when he killed the filibuster on Neil Gorsuch's Supreme Court nomination. She tweeted, "Are we really surprised that Democrats didn't use the nuclear option? Republicans did. Perpetual high road, low road distinction." But back in 2013, she also tweeted, "I'm glad that Democrats went nuclear," promoting her column on the topic. When the Trump-Russia collusion narrative completely falls apart, and it's ruled that he didn't collude with Russia, and they didn't establish any obstruction of justice, that doesn't prove Trump's innocence. No. Because in the world of opposites, when you're innocent, doesn't mean you're innocent.
Progressives have not surrendered. The vast robot army of the Democratic Party fights on as if nothing has changed.
It feels like the seeds of a cover-up are here.
Look, if I'm the Trump children and I'm having a party tonight, right? Like, they won the white privilege regatta.
A racist plot. Virginia Congressman Don Beyer insisted this morning that, quote, there was a lot of collusion within the Trump campaign, even though Robert Mueller, whom Democrats have told us many times is the final word on the question, had already told us otherwise. Senator Mazie Hirono says it doesn't matter what the facts say, collusion is real anyway.
So just because there was not enough evidence for a criminal charge of conspiracy does not mean that this very cozy relationship that Donald Trump has with Vladimir Putin, who, by the way, must be really happy that this came about, that this kind of cozy relationship that is not good for our country, in that it's not transparent, will continue.
Yep, she's a United States Senator.
But also, when the Trump-Russia collusion narrative completely falls apart, and the media has been caught for lying for 2 straight years about this Russia collusion narrative, the media didn't misreport anything. What are you talking about?
And I think the media, the press has done one of the great reporting jobs in the history, especially of covering a presidency by the most news organizations. And look, let's look at where the disinformation and mistakes and lying have come from. Hasn't come from the press. It's come from the President of the United States and those around him.
Okay. In case you're wondering, and you may be, why Donald Trump got elected President of the United States, you just saw it. You may think CNN has been lying to you relentlessly for the last 2 years, the eunuch explained. Not at all. CNN has done a fantastic job. None of this was our fault. We're amazing. Listen to him squeak.
Reporting is what adds the most value. Finding out something new, putting out new information into the world is the best feeling in journalism. It's the greatest value add. That's what hundreds of journalists have been doing, trying to solve pieces of this Trump-Russia puzzle. So don't be fooled by the partisans who cherry pick the worst mistakes of individual journalists or the craziest ideas from commentators and claim that's the entire media. It's not. We're waiting for the facts, because here is what I know. I mean, you're going to hear this from the right for the next days and weeks to come, that the press has basically made all of this up to take down President Trump. but the press is just following a trail that Trump created.
So by lying about the obvious and doing it so obviously, Democrats merely revealed themselves to be everything they claim Donald Trump is: stupid, irresponsible, reckless, corrupt, buffoonish. They had to know their talking points wouldn't work. They repeated them anyway. Why? Because they didn't know what else to say. They're hysterical children, cruel and stupid and vain. They care only about themselves. They learn nothing from their mistakes. And so, their self-regard undiminished, they march on to the next disaster, full of self-righteous confidence. The next battle, they tell us, is over obstruction of justice. It doesn't seem to occur to them that justice is precisely what we got yesterday. Not since September 11th have federal investigators dug more deeply into a case. And in the end, they proved the charges false. Democrats have decided to ignore the findings. Instead, they say they want justice, by which, of course, they mean revenge, punishment, power. That's what they've always wanted. The rest of this, the Mueller investigation included, was staged purely for show. And as they prosper, they will continue to lecture you from Twitter about your imaginary moral failings. Shut up, racist, obey, that you're the wacko. They're always telling you that. You're a conspiracy nut, they'll say. You believe in crazy things on the basis of zero evidence, you and Alex Jones. You think the left is coming for your guns. You think mass immigration is hurting this country. You think illegal aliens are voting in elections. You imagine the tech companies are censoring political speech. You don't trust the media. And by the way, you don't believe in science, and that's why you're hesitant to give a 29-year-old freshman member of Congress complete control over the U.S. economy. You're a lunatic. You should be ignored. And so should Trump, by the way. Go ahead and ignore his complaints about being persecuted. He's just whining.